Imagine this. You're hacking through really dense jungle back in 1860. You're not looking for some lost city, not at all. You're actually just a naturalist, Henri Mouhot, searching for exotic insects.
Right, just doing his field work.
Exactly. And then he stumbles across Angkor Wat. Just finds it. And his reaction, he wrote it was grander than anything left to us by Greece or Rome. He even said Michelangelo might think it an honorable place.
High praise indeed. Quite the discovery for an insect hunt.
It really was. But straight away, it kicked off this huge mystery, at least for the West. Who could have built something so massive, so sophisticated, and why build it deep in the jungle just to, well, leave it behind?
The classic questions, the who and the why.
So today, that's what we're diving into. We're looking at the sources you've provided to get the real story of Angkor, its incredible size, why it eventually emptied out, the whole thing.
Let's do it. There's a lot to unpack.
Okay, so when Mouhot first found Angkor Wat, the perception was, the single amazing temple hidden away. A masterpiece, sure, but just one masterpiece. Did that view actually hold up as people looked closer?
Well, no, not really. I mean, Angkor Wat itself is absolutely astounding. Our sources definitely back that up. It's the world's largest religious monument, a temple, but also a mausoleum for King Suryavarman II, the Sun King.
Wow.
And architecturally, it's breathtaking. Towers like lotus flowers reaching up, stone shrines climbing towards the sky. These endless corridors carved with reliefs, the longest in the world, actually.
For the longest.
Yeah. And the construction quality, it's so precise. It'd be hard to match even now with lasers and things. Plus, it's all symbolic. The huge moat that represents the oceans around Mount Meru, the mythical home of the Hindu gods.
Incredible. But still, you said the initial perception didn't quite hold up.
Right, because it wasn't just Angkor Wat. There was much more.
And figuring that out involved, looking back at an older source, one that people hadn't really trusted. Tell us about Zhu Daguan.
Ah, yes, Zhu Daguan. He's crucial. He was a Chinese official who visited Angkor back in the 13th century. His journal described this: major civilization. A capital city much, much bigger and more developed than archaeologists dared to imagine for centuries.
So why didn't they believe him initially?
Well, a couple of reasons. His account had some bits that sounded fantastical, like claiming Angkor Wat was built in a single day. Clearly impossible.
Okay, that would raise eyebrows.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And also, perspective matters. He sometimes called his hosts barbarians, even while describing their amazing society. Maybe a bit judgmental. So for about a century, French archaeologists who were doing amazing restoration work, they mostly focused on the temples they could see and kind of put Zhu's journal to one side.
It's funny how one person's account, even with flaws, can hold such vital clues. But then technology stepped in. You mentioned NASA in 1994.
Yes, that was a game changer. NASA flew the Space Shuttle Endeavour over Angkor with this special radar. It could see through the dense jungle canopy.
And what did it find?
It was honestly shocking. The radar images prove Zhu Daguan right, in a way. Angkor wasn't just a temple complex, it was huge. A vast city spread out, a kind of rural metropolis.
Bigger than London.
Roughly the size of London at its peak, yes. The radar revealed this intricate network of roads, canals, and thousands of temples nobody knew were there.
Wow. Thousands.
It suggested a massive population, maybe up to 1 million people living there between the 11th and 13th centuries. That would make it one of the largest cities anywhere in the world at that time.
1 million people. That completely changes the picture. It's not just a temple, it's a civilization on a scale we didn't appreciate.
Exactly. It forces a whole rethink.
So if we piece this together, the radar, Zhu Daguan's account, the known temples, what was the real heart of this sprawling city?
That would be Angkor Thom. Mouhot actually suspected this might be the Khmer capital, and he's right. The sources describe Angkor Thom as enormous. An 8-mile wall, a moat around that, covering an area about the size of Manhattan Island.
Manhattan, in the middle of the jungle.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And right at the center, the Bayon Temple, with its famous faces. Zhu Daguan wrote about a bustling city inside those walls, and archaeology, specifically Jacques Auch's excavations, confirmed it. They found the grid system of roads and canals he described, and evidence of thousands of wooden houses.
Wooden houses, which explains why they vanished, correct?
Exactly. Over centuries, the wood just rotted away in the jungle climate, leaving only the stone temples.
And there was one king particularly associated with Angkor Thom's expansion, Jayavarman VII.
Yes, the great builder king. He ruled from 1181 to 1219. He really expanded the empire and commissioned a lot of this incredible architecture, including much of Angkor Thom.
What about his palace? Did Zhu Dagwan describe that?
He did. He mentioned a golden tower, huge decorated lintels and columns carved and painted Buddhas everywhere, and these long, impressive colonnades. Goucher's team actually found physical evidence, too, like these massive post holes about 80 centimeters across for the huge columns supporting the structure. It must have been a truly impressive sight.
It sounds absolutely spectacular. So beyond the buildings, what do we know about the people, the Khmer society that built and lived in all this?
Well, the rulers were seen as god kings. They ruled by divine consent, essentially. Jayavarman II, who founded the empire way back in 802 AD, even had himself crowned Supreme World Emperor King of Kings.
King of Kings. Quite a title.
Indeed. And each king after him tended to build a major temple monument to cement his own glory and divine connection. Zhu Dagwan tells this really intriguing story, too, a legend about the king and a serpent genie.
A serpent genie, do tell.
Apparently, this genie, a Naga spirit with 9 heads, would appear to the king each night in the form of a woman. They had to, couple for the good of the kingdom. If she ever failed to appear, it meant the king's death was near or some disaster was coming.
Wow, that really ties the king's life force directly to the kingdom's fate. A powerful belief.
Absolutely. It shows how central that divine mandate was. And there were other ways power was consolidated. Noble families would send their daughters to the king's entourage, sort of as concubines, which helped bind the provinces to the capital.
How many wives and concubines are we talking?
Zhu Dagwan reported the king had 5 principal wives and a harem of around 3,000 women.
3,000.
Quite the entourage. And below the king, you had a whole hierarchy, ministers, generals, astronomers, officials. It sounds quite similar, actually, to the Chinese system of governance Zhu would have known.
And the population numbers you mentioned earlier were staggering. Any specific examples?
Yeah, the sources give some details, like Taprom, the temple famous for the tree roots growing over it.
Yes. The Tomb Raider temple.
That one. Apparently, it housed at least 12,000 people, priests, staff, workers. The core city, Angkor Thom, probably held between 80,000 and 150,000 people.
Which, compared to London's 30,000 back then.
Exactly. It was huge. And the whole wider metropolis, potentially up to 1 million. Imagine the festivals. Zhu Dagwan described the New Year celebration rockets visible from like 13 kilometers away.
Yeah.
And firecrackers. He said they were the size of swivel guns and shook the whole city.
Firecrackers like cannons. That paints an amazing picture of a really vibrant, loud, living city.
Definitely not a quiet ruin back then.
Okay, so 1 million people, incredible structures, deep in a jungle environment with, monsoons and dry seasons. How on earth did they sustain all that? It must have been a huge challenge.
It absolutely was. And the key, according to the sources, was water. Brilliant water management.
Right. Cambodia's climate is extreme. 8 months dry, then floods.
Precisely. So they built Angkor near the Tonle Sap, the Great Lake. This lake does something amazing the rainy season. The Mekong River pushes water back into it, and it swells to 4 times its normal size.
Wow.
This gave them a reliable water source year-round, plus an unbelievable supply of fish. Black carp, prawns. Zhu even mentioned crocodiles as big as boats.
Good reason to be careful by the water.
You'd think so. And the kings, these god kings, directed the clearing of thousands of acres of jungle for growing rice, the staple food. But rice needs irrigation, especially with that long dry season. So they had to harness the water.
With canals.
Exactly. A huge, complex network of canals and reservoirs called barrays. These were vital not just for irrigating the rice fields, but also for transport. Think about moving all those massive stones for the temples from the quarries, like the Kulin field. They needed waterways.
It sounds incredibly advanced for the time.
Oh, they were masters. While the Dutch were, just digging their first basic canals in Europe, the Khmer had already built this incredibly sophisticated system. Goucher's digs inside Angkor Thom found these huge reservoirs, like 300 meters long, connected by clever, narrow channels running under roads.
That sounds really intricate.
It was ultra-sophisticated, relying on tiny differences in water level. But that sophistication also made it, well, fragile. If it wasn't constantly maintained perfectly, it could easily get blocked up with silt.
So brilliant engineering, but maybe high maintenance.
Very high maintenance. A potential Achilles heel, perhaps.
Okay, that fragility is a key point. And thinking about building all this, the temples, the canals, the reservoirs, the sheer scale, what about the human effort? Where did all the labor come from?
Colossal manpower was needed, no question. Part of it seems to have been willing contribution from the peasantry. Remember, they believed the king was a god. So working on his temples or canals was a form of religious service.
A kind of devotion through labor.
Yes, but that's not the whole story. Slave labor was definitely a major factor too. Zhu Daguan explicitly mentions this. He talks about wild men from the hills being bought and sold as slaves. Wealthy families might own over 100.
So a mix of religious duty and forced labor. What happened if slaves tried to escape or if people committed crimes?
Punishments were harsh, according to Zhu. An escaped slave might have their eyes gouged out or ears cut off. Serious criminals could be buried alive outside the city walls. Lesser crimes, amputation of feet, hands, maybe the nose. It was a tough justice system.
A stark contrast to the spiritual side. So devotion and coercion side by side. What about the economy beyond agriculture and construction? Was Angkor connected to the wider world?
Oh yes, very much so. It was an international trade hub. They produced surplus rice, which they could trade. They were skilled bronze casters making huge statues. And they exported things like ivory, exotic kingfisher feathers, beans, wax.
Who were they trading with, mainly?
China seems to have been the main trading partner. We see this depicted in temple reliefs. You can actually see Chinese-style ships, junks. And archaeologists have found quite a lot of Chinese ceramics, especially in the royal palace area.
Interesting. And Zhu Daguan mentioned something surprising about the role of women in Khmer society.
He did, and it's quite fascinating. It seems women held positions of, well, maybe not outright power in the way we think of it, but certainly authority and economic independence. They could own property. They were active in trade.
Right.
Yes. Apparently, Chinese merchants who settled there often married Cambodian women specifically because of their business skills. Some women even served in the king's bodyguard.
Bodyguards. That's unexpected.
It is. Zhu also made some, let's say, personal observations. He noted that Cambodian women are highly sexed and remarked they were ready for intercourse just a day or two after giving birth. Again, that's his perspective, his cultural lens.
Right. Always important to remember the observer's viewpoint. Okay, so we have this incredibly complex, powerful, thriving city, huge population, amazing engineering, spiritual depth, international trade, complex social structure. It took almost 500 years to build all this up.
A huge investment of time and resources.
And yet, just a century or so after its peak, it was largely deserted. This is the core mystery, isn't it? Why was Angkor abandoned?
It really is the big question. The sort of conventional explanation, the one repeated for a long time, focuses on external enemies.
Like invasions.
Exactly. The Khmer had fought wars throughout their history, often with the Chams from what's now Vietnam. You see battles depicted on the temple walls. But by Zhu Daguan's time, the rising power, the main threat, was the Thai kingdom of Siam to the west.
And Zhu had opinions on the Khmer army.
He wasn't impressed. He described them as ill-prepared for war, fighting unclothed, and lacking proper discipline or strategy. Whether that was entirely fair or not, history seems to bear out the threat. In 1431, the Siamese army did sack Angkor.
Sacked it.
Looted everything they could, apparently, and enslaved a large part of the population, including, the story goes, the king's entire harem, who were taken back to Thailand. That's a devastating blow.
No kidding. That sounds like a pretty definitive reason for leaving. But you said that's the conventional explanation. Is there more to it? A twist?
Well, archaeologists and historians now think it was likely more complicated than just one invasion. There were probably other factors at play, internal issues weakening the empire.
Such as?
Several things, potentially. One idea circles back to Jayavarman VII, the great builder king. His sheer frenzy of activity, building so much, might have simply exhausted the state's resources, pushed things too far.
More expansion, basically.
Could be part of it. Then there's religion. Jayavarman VII was the first Buddhist king after centuries of Hindu god kings. This shift toward a perhaps more compassionate religion might have subtly changed how people viewed the king and the massive state projects. Maybe that divine link, that belief that fueled so much work, started to fray a little.
Interesting. A crisis of faith, almost.
Possibly. And remember that fragile water system we talked about?
High maintenance one.
Exactly. If it wasn't meticulously maintained, it could easily silt up and fail. Maybe later kings, less focused on massive building projects than Jayavarman VII, let the maintenance slip.
And that would impact the rice production.
Critically. Add to that the sheer amount of deforestation needed to clear land for all that rice farming. That almost certainly led to soil erosion, rivers and canals silting up faster, creating a slow-burn ecological disaster.
Right, so it wasn't just one thing. It was maybe the invasion plus internal strains, religious shifts, resource depletion, and the system itself becoming unsustainable.
That seems to be the most likely picture now. A combination of factors. The Thai invasion might have been the final push, but the foundations might have already been weakening.
So what happened then? Did the Khmer civilization just collapse?
Not exactly a total collapse and disappearance. It was more like a strategic retreat.
Hmm.
The Khmer court and elite basically moved. They relocated eastwards, closer to the Mekong River, near where Phnom Penh is today. A more defensible position, perhaps further from the Thais.
And they changed.
Yes, they fully embraced Buddhism, renounced the kind of vast material wealth and monumental building of the Angkorian era. They survived, but they never again reached those lofty heights of Angkor.
And Angkor itself was left to the jungle.
For about 400 years. Derelict, largely forgotten by the outside world, until Muhop stumbled upon it in 1860. Now, of course, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a focus of international research trying to piece together its full story.
It's an incredible journey of rediscovery. From this ruin swallowed by jungle, seen first as just one amazing temple, to understanding it as this vast metropolis, a powerhouse that dominated a huge empire for centuries. Truly one of the world's great lost cities now found.
Absolutely. Its story has it all: ambition, incredible engineering, deep faith, but also the realities of human conflict, the challenges of managing resources, and how even the greatest achievements can be vulnerable to change, both internal and external.
It really makes you think. After all this research, all the technology like radar from space, what else might still be hidden out there under the Cambodian jungle? What other secrets does Angkor hold?
That's the tantalizing question.
And maybe more importantly, what lessons about building great things, about sustaining them, and about the fragility of even the most complex societies? What lessons are still waiting there in those silent stones for us to finally understand today?